You have to go back to 1880 to find the last time a vacancy created in a presidential election year on the Supreme Court was confirmed by a Senate of a different party than the president. That's the history.
So if you can't answer my direct question, are you saying that if Donald Trump...
The answer to your question is we'll see whether there's a vacancy in 2020.
That's Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who's feeling his oats at the moment. That's on Fox News Sunday yesterday, artfully dodging a clear answer, which implies he just might consider confirming a Supreme Court nominee in the election year 2020 if Republicans still control the Senate and if President Trump gets a vacancy. This, of course, after the 2016 controversy over the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Merrick Garland by a Democratic president, Barack Obama. McConnell's answer on Fox led to this debate on Supreme Court history on CBS.
They also conveniently forgotten that Joe Biden said in 1992, when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the Democrats control the Senate, Republican in the White House. If a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it.
I don't think that's right. In 1956, Eisenhower nominated Brennan. The 84th Congress was Democrat-controlled. And also on the Biden rule, Joe Biden was talking in the abstract. There was no nominee. No nominee was blocked. And
that's not at all what happened, John. You're completely misconstruing what happened.
McConnell is right on the history. Eisenhower gave a recess appointment in 1956. The formal nomination and consideration by the Senate didn't happen until after the presidential election year. So McConnell is right on the details. There was a justice seated during a presidential election year. We had a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, and a Democratic Senate. But there was no confirmation until after. But just to the audacity of that, he's essentially saying, yeah, I did this to a Democratic president in 2016, and let's see what happens in 2020. If we still control the Senate and Donald Trump gets a vacancy, he didn't say, I wouldn't do that. That would be wrong, especially in this bitter climate. He just said, hold your fire.
Yeah, let me go ahead and put an end to the murkiness here. If there's an opening in 2020 and he's still the Senate Majority Leader, he will confirm a Supreme Court nominee. And there's two things here. First off, the Biden rule or the Schumer rule or any of that, it's all ridiculous. I'm sorry. I know they cite that as the precedent. It's not precedent. It's not a rule. It's their grounds for what they decided to do in 2016, and that's fine. But this has always been about confirming the person they want in the Supreme Court. It became an election issue. It became an enormous victory for what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has made his entire career about, and certainly the last year and a half about, which is completely reshaping the federal courts in a conservative manner. He has now done that with 2 Supreme Court seats. He's now done this with 26 Circuit Court justices. Another 10 are queued up and could be coming in the near future. If there is another opportunity to tilt the court even further towards the conservative side of things, if you think Mitch McConnell is not going to take that opportunity, I don't know what movie you've been watching over the course of the last 3 years. And look, Democrats have every right and all the grounds in the world to say that this is unfair and this shouldn't have happened. But this is the reality. They control the majority. They control the White House. As Lindsey Graham said, to paraphrase, win your elections and you can do something differently. And that's just the baseline kind of cold-blooded facts on the ground right now.
And I said at the top, the Majority Leader is feeling his oats right now, and he is, because in his view, Democrats are outraged, but in his view, held the Garland seat, got Neil Gorsuch, they got Brett Kavanaugh through after what we all lived through the past few weeks. We'll see what happens, the fallout part of it. But they got Brett Kavanaugh starts his work tomorrow. Just look at these numbers. This is what Mitch McConnell wants to be remembered by. Here's a guy who's often reviled by the Trump base, reviled by the conservative base. This is what he wants you to think about. You say we see Trump in the GOP. You have to add McConnell almost to that graphic as well. 2 Supreme Court confirmations so far. 26 confirmations in the first 2 years of President Trump to the U.S. Court of Appeals. 41 district courts, and there are 39 other federal judgeships. The nominees have cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee. That won't happen before the election, but after the election, they could add 39 more to what is a pretty impressive list. They are reshaping, whatever you think of President Trump, whatever you can say, oh, they haven't passed much legislation this year, and they haven't, that our grandchildren will be talking about. They are reshaping the federal judiciary, and there's more to come.
Just think back a couple of years ago when McConnell was booed at the Republican presidential convention. Yeah, absolutely. Republicans have him to thank for totally changing the structure of the courts. And he is not done. His work is not done. Right now, he is threatening to keep the Senate in for the next couple of weeks, which keeps Senate Democrats who are vulnerable from going home to try to save their seats, because he wants to get a number of court judges confirmed to different courts on various levels. But in order to get home, he's saying, you Democrats need to help us get these confirmed, which helps him, again, reshape the bench. And so he's holding that over their heads. He's probably going to get some more in the next couple of weeks.
It's worth thinking about him compared to John Roberts, who leads another branch of the government. John Roberts is conservative, too, pretty clever, but is not. You could say McConnell is succeeding and moving the country to the right. You could also say he's breaking norms and making the country even more divided than it was. And you could probably say Roberts is handling it a little bit differently. So it's worth thinking about that. McConnell may be, there's a movie coming out about Dick Cheney soon. McConnell, I would argue, is way more important than Dick Cheney. He's been a transformational figure in American politics. But I'm not sure saying we're going to not work with the president for, so he can lose is necessarily great for the country's democracy.
Yeah, that's a great point. But if you think about the relationship, remember, Mitch McConnell was on the receiving end of some Trump tweets and some Trump talk about what happened to repeal and replace, what happened to my border wall funding, other issues. Now they're buds.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just been a fascinating marriage of convenience, and it's been a pretty rocky road to get there, no question, given some of the legislative bumps in the road that they had on health care and on other issues. But we did see that Mitch McConnell, I mean, this is, as Phil said, if you've been watching Mitch McConnell, not just for the last few years, but for the last several decades, you know this is how he works. He looks around. There are not very many rules that are actually true rules in the Senate, except for the filibuster rule and some of these other technical rules that he knows very well, but he will look around, he counts his votes, he figures out what the traffic will bear, and in this case, he knew that if he led the conference down this road toward pushing these issues at this time about the court, that was going to work for him, that's what Donald Trump wanted, that was frankly what the base wanted, that was the one thing that united the base that helped to elevate him and so many of his colleagues, and the base that elevated Donald Trump to the presidency. And now they are so closely aligned. I think the interesting question is going to be, now that Kavanaugh's been confirmed, how much longer does that continue? And does it translate to something other than the court? Because it's going to have to, particularly if the Democrats take one chamber of Congress. Then they're going to really need a lot of Republican sort of alliance to hold back some of the...
Suggest a small test will come after the election when they're trying to keep the government open and the president wants that aforementioned border wall funding again, and Senate Republicans say, we'll see how that one goes.